All right. Thanks for coming to the what I've decided to call the Gauntlet critique slash feedback town hall. I'm totally open to feedback or critique on that name itself because I don't know what to really call this because I don't necessarily consider myself an expert in this. I definitely want it to be a conversation. I guess I should introduce myself. Uh, I'm Clint Smith. I've played with the Gauntlet for about 3 years now, off and on. Um, I teach sound design at a film school in North Carolina, and I've been in the film business for over 20 years. And so I've been on the receiving end of critique for a long time. It's only been the last few years where I've been responsible for being on the giving side of the critique. So I've realized how bad I am at it and how bad everyone is at it, generally speaking. And so it's something I've tried to kind of dive into. And I've wanted to have conversations about this with my other faculty, but I don't quite feel I'm ready to kind of branch out there yet. And being part of the playtest weekend a couple of weekends ago, and we had like a wrap up and we kind of talked about this. And I was like, hey, I'd love to talk with all of you about this very topic because we're all doing that sort of thing. It seems like most people have some sort of work in progress, and that's exciting. And it's also like good to kind of know how to give and take critique. Little housekeeping things. All the like gauntlet rules still apply. If there's something that shows up in examples that you're not excited about, feel free to X card it. No worries about that. Obviously, open doors in place. You don't have to hang out. It is starting to get kind of cloudy and windy here. So if my internet kicks me off, don't expect me to come back and you can go on about your day. So yeah, like I was saying, I've been in the film business for a while. So I've been a part of the receiving critique. And I've had some really, really good critiques. I've had some really, really bad and negative ones. And I've had a lot that make no sense at all. And I don't know when people learn how to do this or when people should learn how to do this. It's a very much a thing that's beneficial for everyone. So it's one of those things that never gets taught apparently. But there's a couple of things that I've come across that I want to share with everyone. There's this first website. Oh, first of all, I've got a little note here. Make this editable by everyone. Here's some links that I'm going to be referring to throughout the thing today. And if you want to add any notes at the end, please feel free to drop anything in or add links of your own. You can change whatever you'd like. The first thing is I was introduced to an Instagram account by a guy named Mitch Goldstein, and he teaches design at, what is it, Rochester, New York Design University. But he's got a really kind of smug Instagram feed about how toxic art school critique can be. And when I first started reading, I'm like, this is so true, because I went through it and now I'm part of it. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. But he's got a really good little short, easy to digestible website about critique. And he's got a page for purpose of critique, getting critique, giving critique, and some other links. And what I really want to talk about today is what I'm going to kind of call the work in progress critique. This is not for once something's finished and we're kind of giving it a review or a critique, how it fits in the whole world, but during the creative, iterative part of the process. Like, how do we look at something and help the person make it better? That's what I'm really interested in today. And so like a critique is 100% about the work itself. It should never be about the people who are doing the work. That seems really obvious but it's really hard to divorce ourselves from our biases about the people we're working with or that we're watching do things or consuming their work. But it should really always be just about the work. And Mitch's website here has some good kind of actionable things to create that. There's another one that I've come across that I'm really fascinated by, which is the Liz Lerman critical response process. That's also on that first link I sent, but here's the direct link to a rules version that I kind of put together for it. And this one actually has a more codified step-by-step process on how a critique could go. And something I'm kind of interested in about it is it actually has a facilitator. It has a GM, which I felt like this community might actually be kind of excited about, because what it does is it has the artist and then it has the responders, and each one of those different groups has different rules about what they can and cannot say. And the facilitator's there to not only make sure that those rules are adhered to, but that the process keeps moving forward in a productive way. And I just want to walk through this step by step and see what people think. So the first step, this is after the art has been viewed, read, whatever it may be, is statements of meaning. And this is supposed to be a moment where the responders get a chance to give their first response, but without really interjecting too much information. It's supposed to be mostly like an emotional response. The examples that I have on here, I've put together to kind of gear towards my filmmaking people. So the examples I have are, I found the pace of your film to be exciting. I found the character interactions evocative. And this is also a new version of this document. If you have some role-playing game ideas, please feel free to update this sheet. You can kill my film-related work if you want. I make multiple copies of all these things. And so this is a moment where each person is going to go through and kind of give like their first little emotional response to the work. And that should last however long it lasts. It would probably be pretty quick. Everyone will get 1 or 2 sentences and you're going to move right on. And it's really designed to be like, what is the viewer's first response to something without digging too deeply? The second part, which to me is actually the most important part of this process, is the artists themselves will ask direct questions. So after each question, the responder will answer. The responder may express opinions if they are in direct response to the question asked, and they do not contain suggestions for how to change or to fix things. And I always tell my students, like, when you show your movie, you better have some questions that you want answered afterwards, or else the critique's not going to really benefit you at all. Because we can tell you if we liked it or if we hated it, but that doesn't really help you very much. And again, the facilitator's there to make sure that the responders don't go off the rails and just go from one thing to the next. For example, here is a little game I've been working on. This is my card from Brindlewood version of Quantum Leap. It's an episodic little putting things right. I've also got direct questions that I want to find out if I were to ever do like a Q&A things with this. Right now, it's a one person, one keeper game. And my biggest question that I want to know is, will it actually function with just one player? And then, like, should I make this other contact a PC, and how would that function? And once I kind of get a good idea of what the answer to these questions are, then I think I can go to my next iteration. But until I kind of figure these out, I kind of don't know what I want to change or how I want to change it. These are just a list of things that I'm curious about. And if I were going to make any of those changes, what kind of effect would it have on it later? Okay, let me jump back to my.
Chris noted that we don't have view access to the doc.
Thank you.
You got it.
All the other ones I was always here, just not that last thing.
Yeah.
But you shared it, so it's fine.
Because I made a copy from my last one. Try it now. Cool. Thank you. So yeah, step 2 is answer a direct question. And that is a beautiful thing. Step 3 in the Liz Lerman's response protocol is responders ask neutral questions about the work. And this is the one that I actually see being the hardest, at least for my faculty that I work with, to be able to do. Because not only is it really hard to find neutral questions sometimes, but so in this case, a neutral question would be, if you were given another week of editorial, what would you change? That's the nice way of saying you're not done yet. Or there's something, this is boring, or what, whatever it might be. Or what were you thinking by, or what was the goal of your color scheme? That's, the nice way of saying I don't like your colors. But there could be a good reason if you give them a chance to answer that question. And then, oh, wait, okay, I see it. So it's just a nice way of kind of asking the harder questions in a way that lets people answer them in a safer way. And the last bit, while I don't know, like, it kind of depends on the people, but at least in terms of the situation I've been at my university, is my favorite part. It's where the responders can ask if they want more information. And it's up to the artist to just say, no, thank you. I don't want you to answer that. For example, I have an opinion about the pacing of your opening scene. Do you want to hear it? And they can say, nope, I don't want to hear it. And I think a lot of people that are responders are going to have a hard time with that, because they have opinions and they want to tell them. And if you say, hey, I want to tell you about this, and to say, no, I don't want to hear it, could be tricky for some people. And I think that's okay. But I think what I love about this is it puts boundaries up, and we all need those, right? Like, if there's something you just don't want to hear about, you can just say, I'm not interested in that. And I've noticed a lot of like some of the games that I've been a part of on Kickstarter or whatnot, that they will release a PDF version and they will spell out what they actually want to hear about and what they don't want to hear about. They're like, if you have questions about this or comments about this, we don't want to hear it. I'm like, yes, that's great, because that's not important for them. So I know you just read this and I just gave you a brief overview. Are there any thoughts about this one little 4-step process? Anybody want to?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. Okay. For those I haven't met yet, hi, I'm Cass. Let's see, context-wise, I'm a QA manager at a software company, and one job back, I got training on providing feedback, and I like that a lot of this is in line with what I learned there, especially asking permission to give critical feedback. One of the things that you learn, or that I learned, was that when you have feedback to give, you should frame it in terms of, is now a good time to give you some feedback? Are you in a space to hear these things that, may require some growth or problem solving? So I just wanted to echo that. Yeah, I think that step 4, baking in permission, is really awesome. I have more thoughts, but I'm happy to let other people weigh in.
Bethany or Chris, do you, or any? You can keep.
I mean, oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have anything. Go ahead.
I'm being a terrible facilitator. Bethany,
Politeness
you can go ahead.
jujitsu.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bethany, did you have something?
Not really. This is very different from any sort of critical process I've ever seen in my life. So I went through a lot of college writing workshops where the writer does not talk until the very end. Like you sit there, you listen, you do not argue, you do not question. Like you can ask questions at the end for clarification, but there's no, and I really, it's hard to do, but I really like it because it's so easy to start getting defensive and like just completely throwing it off the rails. And like if you just sit there and listen and then like bring up questions at the end, like you might not want to hear it all, but at least you're not like going to just interrupt the whole thing with one detail that somebody said that you didn't like.
Yeah, for sure. And I've sat through enough like critiques of student films, which are the worst kinds of films. And like, yeah, like there's some things that don't need to be said. Like we get it. And so like just by saying, hey, do you want to hear this? And if they say no, it's like, cool. Like we can just move on. Are there any thoughts about step 2? This is the thing that
I like step 2. Obviously the facilitator has to keep the artist from using it as a time to mount a defense of their work. But I like the idea of the artist asking questions because they're still soliciting feedback, but it gives them a little, it takes off, like Bethany, I've also been involved in some critiques where the creator just sits there and everybody tells them what they want. And if that's not too disciplined, it can become a dump, just everybody dumping stuff. It can feel kind of overwhelming. So what I like about step 2 is the artist has some control over what feedback they're soliciting. But it should avoid being like the artist saying, well, this is why, like, yeah, none of you get it or whatever, it shouldn't be declarative. I like that it's inquisitive.
None of you understand my art. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think that's exactly the point of this, is to put the artist in the driver's seat of the whole process, because it's their work. Everyone else there is there in service of their work, hopefully. I mean, sure, there's bad ways of critiquing, but the goal is for the work. And so they're the ones that know what their issues are. Because I've been in critiques where everything is talked about except for the thing that they want to fix. And like things get talked about that are way past the point. At least with film, for example, you can't go back and change the prop that was on screen. Why are we even talking about that? Let's move on. But this
or
can kind of
in a game, it could be that the rules weren't explained clearly, which is a big problem. I have always struggled with, but it's a late in the process problem,
Yeah,
anyway.
and that could be a thing where like the artist, the writer could ask, like, are my rules written clearly? Or wait, what were the rules that you got stumped on? Like, because like that's a better question, actually. Like, of all the rules, where did you get stumped? Yeah.
I feel like especially in the context of a game where you might be tweaking and making lots of changes. Whereas like, I guess I haven't done a lot of film stuff, but I feel like a film is sort of, you edit it and everything and it's kind of done. Whereas a game, you can make a lot more changes. And so you might have like very specific things that you want people to focus on.
Yeah. And like, was that Nate? Was that you? Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Nate, how you doing?
Hey, it's good.
Good.
Thanks.
And yeah, like the subtitle of this book is hilarious. It's called Critical Response Process: the method for getting useful feedback on anything you make from dance to dessert. So it is open to like all creations, because everything that you do different versions of, you know, this is accountable or this is applicable to. Yeah. All right. I also got Dan Brown recommended this book, Discussing Design.
Lowell just
And-
recommended that to me last week. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a little disappointed that I'm only 34 pages into it because I'm really digging it and I do not feel worthy of bringing anything up about it yet, because it's like I need to reread it. Like there's enough highlighter marks in here, but this is a subject that I'd like to kind of keep going, and maybe we can bring it back and discuss this. We can have a book club. But so far it's been great and it's relatively inexpensive. I also threw that on that linked sheet that I sent out earlier on the thing. I'll reshare that just in case. So that's kind of the giving critique side of it that I just kind of wanted to discuss right now. But the getting critique part can be just as hard. And that's like the harder emotional one. For me, it's probably a little different when it comes to like a game, because that's something you can give to someone and have them read or have them play. And there's not a lot of preamble about it. The thing that I get on my students about is when they get ready to show a movie, they say, this is my movie, we're at this point, and then they start apologizing. They start doing we still have to do this, we still have to do this, we still have to get this, sorry about this. And it just immediately makes me like, boom, 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 like lose interest in the movie. And I'm like, don't apologize about anything. Just put it out there. Tell us what step along the process you are, and just let us watch it. The more you start to apologize, the more we start to already want to find holes in it. But I don't know what all of your takes on it are, but if you're in person, which we are a lot now, I don't have a pen in front of me, I just have a highlighter. I'm like, I don't care if it's 2022, have a piece of paper and a pen in front of you. We're still mostly where, at least for us, most of the faculty are older and they want to see you with a pen and a piece of paper in front of you. And you just write down everything that's said. You can go later and be like, that's dumb, and throw it away. But just go, oh, okay, cool. You know, making notes about what's said is super helpful. And it also kind of makes the people giving critique buy into you a little bit more, because like, oh, wow, Chris is actually listening to me. I'm going to make sure I give my good, honest feedback. And that's so helpful. I don't know what anyone else's like prep or getting critique sort of rituals are, but those have been mine.
I like how that can make it clear that I'm being attentive, and that I can, and how it could be a ritual for me to make me more attentive. But at the same time, I would really want to record stuff, because I'm gonna miss stuff. While I'm writing stuff down, I might miss stuff. Yeah,
and most of them do, and that's totally cool. I just want to make sure that they're like, because there's something about a piece of paper and a writing utensil versus this. Like, I know you could so easily be taking notes on your phone, but you could also be doing Candy Crush, and I would never know.
If we were in person, I would want to put my phone out on the table in between us and hit record.
Yeah.
And maybe take notes, but even just having that phone out there might make everybody feel like what they're saying is being taken more seriously.
Yeah, for sure.
If in this format, of course, I just record Zoom.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I think even aside from the medium that a person is taking notes on, if they're practicing active listening and paraphrasing things back to me to show that they're engaged and want to make sure that they're actually hearing what I'm saying, that's a huge bonus for the conversation, like knowing that they're really tapped in.
Good point.
Yeah. So a couple of like rules that I have for myself that I fail at constantly, but I think are worthy rules, is when I'm doing critique and I'm being the responder side, I've removed the word should from my vocabulary. Because I noticed other people around me kept saying, oh, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, you should. And the power dynamics, at least at a university, is, oh, my professors are telling me I should do this. That means I have to do it. And what that equates is that it's the faculty making the movies and not the students. Now, in a non-university world, that's a little less, but it still matters. Like if I'm working with Cass here and I say, you should do this and you should do that. No, like do what you want. Like it's your game. Like I got to a point where I started hating that I was like interjecting myself so much into it, because it's not me. Again, it's about the work. It shouldn't be about me. It shouldn't be about the artist. And once I kind of realized that, it helped me like automatically edit out so many comments that I would have made. If I'm like, oh wait, if the only way to say this is you should, then it probably shouldn't even be said. And I've caught myself in class like a couple of times. I'm like, oh, you should do this, and I'm like, wait, sorry, that's not it. If I were to be doing this, I would do this. In class, it's a little different because it's like I'm actively trying to get X, Y, or Z across versus their work. Oh,
you mean like a principal or something?
Yeah. Like for example, let's think of something that maybe in a movie, the dialogue sits in the center channel of the array so that the audience looks at the screen. And so it's generally understood that you should put your dialogue in the center of the screen so that the audience looks that way. And so like, yeah, you should do that unless there's a good reason not to. And then let's talk about it. So yeah, but there are, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say that on a Gauntlet, if it's somebody who's really engaged with the Gauntlet or is known to have put out a bunch of games, I could see that kind of power dynamic playing out even without having professors and students, you know.
That's very true.
Like Bethany, I know you've put out a couple games, you know, that would give your feedback a lot of weight, I think.
If it does, that is completely mistaken. I cannot critique games. I'm terrible at it because when I'm playing a game, when I'm playtesting a game, I'm a player more than I am a critic.
Mm-hmm.
If you want criticism, I need to play it and then I need to go back and read it.
So
and then like email you my comments.
Yeah, that's very true. So let's actually that's something else I kind of wanted to talk about, which Bethany just totally like lobbed up there like a potato. For us here as TTRPG people, like critiquing the rule set that you read that's just a PDF versus critiquing the game itself in a playtest, like how would you think would be the best way of judging those separately or together, or like what's your take on that? We'll start with Bethany since she kind of led me there.
Yeah, I think that I have a very hard time giving feedback like immediately after a session because of that, because like how much of that is the game and how much of that is that person's GMing and how much of that is the other players and how much of that is just whether I had a headache that day or not, you know? So like I kind of want a chance to like go think about it for a little while and then like read the rule set and see the intent, or maybe, you know, maybe I misinterpreted a rule during the game. So like if they want comments on the game, my comments at the end of the session are not going to be great unless there's something that just really jumps out at me. I don't know. I think I've definitely heard other people give like real good, comments with actual substance at the end of a session. I don't know how they do that.
It's funny because I feel almost the opposite of what you're saying, that for me, the game experience as it was played is where the rubber meets the road, and the rules are sort of like the potential for a infinite number of game sessions, but the game sessions are the actual play. So, and I'd be interested to explore how this fits into Liz Lerman's structure of critique, because like I could talk about this seemed clunky, or I didn't know what to do when this happened, or I was kind of waiting for you to say X when we were in the session that just happened, and then the creator could say, oh, well, it's supposed to go like this, or something, which is all well and good, but it's like sort of in their head. And yeah, I feel like if I were lucky enough to play the game multiple times, then I could start to get a sense of the game's potential space, game space. But that, yeah, it's funny. I sort of feel differently, Bethany. I feel like all I have to critique is what we just played. It's interesting.
So
Yeah.
let me ask, because this is something that I've been trying to figure out the actual question. So I'm on like draft 3 or 4 of what the question is, but it's basically what you were asking about. Like, if it doesn't show up in the gameplay, but it does show up in the rules, where does that fall into like it should be the responsibility of the writer at that point to be like asking about like, did this rule work, or like, why didn't we get to this point? I guess I'm trying to say, like, if something doesn't show up in the game, does it need to be there? And that's where I think this book is starting to get into, where it's looking at design, where it says things like, what's the object or the objective of the game, and how are the elements of that game achieving that objective? So if you have a rule in your game, how is it helping that game do the thing the game's about? And then, is it effective? If yes, how and why? And I'm trying to think of a good example. So
like you're distinguishing from discussing play, you're discussing the design. It's discussing the intent.
It's how the design hits the play. And so the objective is to create X play experience. And you do that by using these rules. And then once you've played it, you can say, did these rules actually achieve the play experience I was going for? And then ask yourself yes or no, and then why or why not. Sorry.
I mean, easy example would be the discontent tokens from the Quiet Year. Like, for those who aren't familiar, it's when somebody does something and you feel like your segment of the population wasn't consulted or was slighted, you take a token, and they have no mechanical weight. They're purely a way of saying at the table, like, hey, I didn't like that, without saying as much. I really like those because I think that they feed into the game's theme of community discussions with the limited communication that you have. Other people are like, well, if I took a bunch of discontent tokens. Yeah, there you go. Great. Yeah.
I always want I want to do something with them.
Yep.
and there's nothing. They're just like there.
I find that if you hold one in your hand and you look another player right in the eyes as they do something good and you slide it back into the middle of the table, there you go. It served its purpose.
Oh, that's a cool idea. Because yeah, like that's hitting on like one of the questions I showed you earlier for my game is, how many of you have played a Brindlewood Bay or the Between?
I haven't yet, actually.
Okay. Well, there's end of session questions, which are role-playing prompts that you play to, and you get an experience point if you do it. For this game, I'm like, I don't think I need those, because every session you're going to be a different character almost. And so having those by default could be more limiting than it could be driving towards a story. So one of my questions is, if I scrap, or should I scrap the end of session questions? And then how does that actually affect the overall gameplay? Is it good? Is it bad? Or is it just completely unnoticeable? So that's where I was like, what Chris was talking about, like those two differences, because the rule set is different than what actually lands on the table, depending on the people at the table, like Bethany was saying. So, and role-playing games are interesting to talk about for multiple reasons, but particularly with this whole criticism thing, because you can probably be the best rules writer ever, and it will never make it to the table the same way twice, because it is very much dependent upon the people at the table. And so like, it's like, how fair is it to actually like critique a game after it's been written? I don't know the answer to that, which is kind of outside of what we were going for here, but does that make?
Well, I mean, that's what reviews are, and they're important.
Yeah. So, well, another thing that I've had a couple of questions about, or a couple of conversations with some of my faculty members, is what's the difference between a critique and a review?
I mean, I'd say the with a critique, your goal is to have growth and change in the piece, whereas a review is just, hey, other people who might purchase this thing, here's what I thought about it.
Yeah.
Completely different audience. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And there's also like, I mean, critique could also still be like post release, like, there's art critique, there's film critique. But like with tabletop games, since the experience is going to change for every player, that doesn't happen when you read a book. The book's written in text, and it's always going to be the same no matter what. A movie's always going to play the same from beginning to end. A game is not. Board games can kind of be the same every time. Like, they have, as long as you're following the rules, there's things that you can actually touch and move, and like there's more exacting things, and players have, of course, there's going to be caveats to this, less control over what is the final outcome. So
yeah, I guess even tactical role-playing games like D&D are building stories among the players, between the players and the GM, and that story is not the same for everybody by a long shot, even if the components are like elves and dwarves or whatever.
yeah, very true. And if you have a module and you're sticking to it very tightly, it's still going to be a little different.
And I love those differences, hopefully very different.
Yeah.
Now, there's a book I got from the people who make Dungeon Crawl Classics called How to Write Games That Don't Suck, How to Write Adventures That Don't Suck, something like that. And it's just an anthology of articles, but one of them talks about the degrees of separation between the writer and the experience for different media. Where role-playing games is just so much more removed than anything else because of what you were saying. The creator writes rules that get interpreted by a GM who runs a game for the players, and the players have their experience of that. So it's just so many Kevin Bacons away from
At least 6. Awesome.
But it's an interesting distinction that you're making between reviews and critique. It's like one of you said, the review is serving the people who might buy the game, not serving the game.
And there's also people that do like in-depth critique on a thing, and they look at it in the cultural context of the time that it's in, and like they challenge like the intent that it was made with versus what was going on in the world. And it gets into a lot higher level of research and thought than just, hey, it's good, I like it. 2 thumbs up, which is more of a review. And I don't know the answer of where a review becomes a critique and when a critique becomes a review. It's something that's kind of stumped some of my smarter friends. I'm like, yeah, I got them. So if you happen to think about that for a while, let me know if you come up with an answer, because I'm at a loss, because they seem like they're the same word, but they also kind of seem like they have different weight. So
Yeah, totally.
Um,
I ran a game for playtesting weekend where it was, as I thought of it, a GM-less game. And it became clear during the play that I was going to have to GM the game. And somebody else who read my sort of Google Doc of rules was like, it seems like you don't want this to be a GM'd game, but it seems like it needs to be a GM'd game. Anyway, just something that came up in the experience. My rules as written were like, this is a GM-less game, but both the person who read the rules and had been in conversation with me about it said, sounds like it needs a GM. And the people who played it were immediately, like in the course of play, we all realized that one of us was going to have to present the conflict and the world. So I don't know, both the in-play experience and the sort of meditating on the rules kind of thing both brought that out.
Can I ask what's happened since? Have you been able to like
I
clarify?
haven't written a new draft since I got the feedback on the rules, because that was just last week, but it's going to have a GM. I'm going to try to spread out some of those responsibilities so there's not like so much prep or, I hate this sort of abuse of power that can come with a GM, but it's going to have a GM. I'm telling linear stories, that have a rising arc of conflict and resolution, and like that, they're not slice of life belonging outside belonging things.
Yeah.
It's adventures. So yeah, it has to have a GM.
Was there anything that you could think of just doing like iterative work, like to keep it being GM-less and still get the game experience you wanted? Or
I could tie myself in knots. I could add more and more complexity to the rules as a way of trying to mechanize the sort of GM responsibilities. But as my friend who read the rules said, like when you mechanize when you add more mechanics, you're not simplifying things for the players. You're giving them more things they have to remember. I was like, yeah, it's so true. So like, I was pretty well checkmated in this one email that she sent, where I was like, yep, that's got to have a GM. I'm philosophically opposed to them as a whole idea, but it's gonna have one.
Yeah, no, that's one of the what's that? The saying "less is more." Like,
Yeah.
It's one of those sayings that I've heard so many times. I hate it, and I hate it even more when it actually becomes true. Because it's like, shit, it's right. Yeah.
The short distance between those 2 points, right? It's just
yeah. And sometimes it's sad that that's the answer.
And I have to admit that GMs are not just some artifact of history. They actually serve a purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, what I would also like, if anybody has anything, like any other work in progress critique tips or tricks or things that you found helpful or unhelpful, I would love to know what they are. Just because I'm kind of on this journey to kind of educate myself on it. So I'm sure you could share the joy if you feel so inclined.
This is hard to do. I've had a hard time like doing this actually, so I have this problem when I play. There's especially one game that I play tested many times, and I always end up play testing it with people who are going to have fun regardless. The game could completely suck and I would never know it because everybody has fun. I have fun too. It's a GM-less game. I'm basically just facilitating it. I think I'm explaining the rules okay, sometimes I forget some obvious ones. But like I'm playing it with people I know and we're used to playing together. So I could leave things out, and there's enough like understanding of each other's play style that, if I left something out, would I know it? So I guess my problem is like finding people who don't know how to play, or who don't play that style of game a lot, or that I haven't played with, or that like are terrible players. um, or getting people, actually this would be better, get someone else to run it and don't be present, just like watch the recording later. I have never met, I've actually, one person has done that one time with a game of mine.
How did that
Any
go?
tips for it may have had the same problem actually, because the person facilitating that had been in a couple previous playtests of it, so she understood it really well, and she was playing with people who like Gauntlet people who had been around for a while and like had played together before. So I watched it and I'm like, yeah, this is hilarious, this is fun to watch, and it sure looks like it was fun to play. That's helpful. That's a little bit more of an indication than when I have played it with people, but it's still like, I'd like to see someone who was not familiar with it try to run it.
It may also just have been a good game. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
I would love it if that was the case. I hope that is the case, but like, I kind of don't, I don't know.
Would you like an idea?
Yeah, actually, how do I find people I don't know to run a game?
Oh, like to finding people. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry. The thing that I always have our film students do, because it's a movie, it's supposed to be entertainment, and it's supposed to hit as many people as possible. And I tell them, if you're only showing it to film professors and film students, it's terrible. Bad. You're not, show it to your mom, show it to your dad, show it to your friend that you grew up since you were 2. Like the people that don't know anything about how films are made, they're going to be the ones that give you the honest answer. So like, I know it may be actually exponentially harder, but bring in your friends that don't play role-playing games.
Oh, that's a trial by fire.
Yeah, but you know,
he's convincing them to do it.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to convince someone to watch a movie.
Yeah. So, I mean,
but yeah.
To your point about finding people who are outside of those circles, I've seen people on Reddit asking for playtesters who they don't know. There are like sub communities outside of the Gauntlet, made up of some smattering of Gauntlet people. Like I'm part of a Discord server where we just do tons of one shots all the time, and we've got, I don't know, like 40, 50 people. Like if you want to throw that my way, I can make sure it gets into people's hands and see if people will run it. But I think it's a matter of just like putting it out there with absolute randos and saying, please wreck my baby.
Yeah. Another thing you might consider is it sounds more like you are looking for play testing rather than critique necessarily, or maybe more like a play testing group of board game prototyping testing, or even like a video game meetup, like the sorts of people that are interested in playing games that aren't necessarily really plugged into role-playing games might be very open to trying out something, even if it's not like perfectly constructed yet.
Good idea. And that could definitely, like, if you want to know if your rules are written clearly, good way to do it.
Big time. And just like, get yourself a cozy blanket when you sit down and watch that recording, is what I would say. I've never done this and I aspire to do it, but boy, I would want maybe some treats, a drink, something, a pillow to hold on to, because it could be merciless.
Honestly, like I said, the one time somebody ran a 2-shot of a game of mine and recorded it, and I watched the recording, and like 30 minutes in, I was like, I can never run this game again. These people are like, this is hilarious. This is, I can't top this.
What the optimal playthrough of the game happened? That's good.
It wasn't optimal. I mean, like there there, I think, were two of the same people in the second session as the first, and it was a continuing story. Like it was not an optimal situation, but like, yeah, they seemed to have a lot of fun with it. And like I said, it was certainly fun to watch.
Excellent.
Great.
Well, I'm going to leave this Gauntlet critique feedback town hall notes page up. Like if you come across any articles or any like what's the resources, that's the word I'm looking for. Yes, sir. Resources, please feel free to drop them in there. Like I'm kind of in this moment where I'm just like overwhelming myself with reading material on this subject. So I'd love to know what people come across. Because I found a good amount about dealing with critique during work in progress for general art and design. I definitely haven't come across anything for role-playing games yet, other than a few snide Twitter comments. And we're not going to lean on those for being expert opinions. But yeah, thanks for coming. And I appreciate the comments. And it was nice to meet everyone.
Nice to meet you
Good
too.
chat, gang.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Situation. Excellent. All righty, y'all. Thank you.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too.
Bye.